Welcome to TPL's book club. I know it's been a while. This is going to be a hyper competent combined episode where I'm going to discuss the origins of victory. It took me a while to get through this thing. Uh, I'll discuss that here in a bit. Anora, I finally finished that. It was on my watch list for a while. Wall Street, also another movie. Obviously, as a financier, you kind of have to. Um, and Pragmata. I finally got finished that. Um, Not the secret ending. There might be a whole deal. I'm gonna spoil that a little, but that'll be at the very end. So just sequencing that. So the origins of victory. I did like the book or the content, but I have this weird ability where I find something that's cool conceptually, but then obviously I don't know if it's the style of writing or just how material is presented um, that makes me drop it. And that's probably, if I didn't get the audiobook, I would not have finished this book. So, so let that be, I guess, the main criticism. But other than that, like there's so much technology in there discussed uh, that's intriguing, and obviously I typically read fiction, so and I don't know, I was very interested in this, especially as someone very fascinated by like military technology, and like the adaptation of that over time into civilian technology, right? It, these things in the military world become civilian tech or civilian, used or have civilian use case down the road or downstream, right? Like we were using AI in I think the early 2000s in the military, or at least what we know now, or in machine learning, maybe not so much LLMs. I'm not too certain on that standpoint, but mostly the data analytics stuff. Like, um, I don't think the book discusses Palantir, but those companies like that. I know Oracle is definitely one of them. Um, like store data warehousing and whatnot. Um, but that's just like the AI side of things. You have the internet that popped up. I think I don't have a conclusive year that I recall when the internet popped up into existence. At least I think it was in the 80s, and then obviously it trickled out to becoming something everybody has, um, public utility per se. So there's that viewpoint. And it's interesting because like you have systems of thought, systems of engineering that come straight out of military and then have been like completely modified for commercial use. Amazon's a great example of that, coming from like if I recall correctly, like a Soviet kind of military technology. Like the Soviets had this type of military planning where they had the guys up top looking down at the people moving pieces of whatever on a board, and I believe that mentality was is like just grabbed and thrown, utilized at least in the warehousing proportion of Amazon. Also former Amazon alum, so that's you know, uh, I don't know. I think most of like the modern technology that we kind of overlook came straight out of military use case or military purposes. Like it's just crazy, especially with computers and AI. Um, and that fascination being said, obviously, like what else have we developed or will we develop? And that's kind of what attracted me to the book. Naturally, I'm just not the biggest fan of nonfiction. Maybe it's because I haven't read nonfiction in forever, but like I think the author does a great job. It's just like this is not typically what I read, so, so maybe I had more of a challenge to read it. Um, and I would have dropped this if I didn't get the audiobook, so that's kind of my main criticism here. But aside from that, it's an intriguing book. It's pretty thick typically. Like this is probably around the size of Brothers Karamazov or even larger. I mean, well, excluding the notes, Lawrence is like 400 ish, 440 ish. It's around there. Maybe Brothers Karamazov was longer, but I think that book was shorter, like physically speaking. Um, but I don't know. I feel like that book, Brothers Karamazov, kind of ruined my taste in literature, and trying to reclaim that has been a royal pain. So moving forward to Anora, um, I didn't really like the first like 30 minutes or like first third of that movie. The movie started getting good the second everything starts going downhill, right? And I think like what I think they're in Vegas in that movie. TLDR, some Russian oligarch's kid falls in love with a sex worker. Um, that whole thing, it's kind of like it drew parallel. I got a buddy that's a former Marine, and he's talking about all the strippers and whatever, where like Marines fall in love with strippers and stuff, and it just doesn't work out. Uh, that kind of overlay with the Russian oligarch's son was kind of funny to like see that parallel. Um, and I don't know. It was kind of like I understood like that thing that marketers were trying to say is like a modern day Cinderella or whatever, Romeo and Juliet, but it's just like um I don't know about that because literally the first third of the movie basically could have been cut or was literally like comparable to a porno, and I don't want to see that on like a fucking movie screen or a TV. Uh, for 30 minutes straight. That's kind of like, or maybe it was an hour. It's like, what's the plot here? There's nothing really. Um, but when things started like tumbling, that's like kind of where it was like more intriguing. Like after they're married, and all of a sudden, the Tor what's his name, Taurus is getting called. You have the two Gangoons. Um, or like trying to, I forget what the kid's name was, but I don't know. I liked like the second and third, everything after the first third of the movie. It was just the first third kind of was a little I want to say obscene. I want to say obscene. I don't think that's the right term, but it's just too sexually graphic for me. Where it's like, okay, cool, this is going on. I don't really care. I'm not really engaged. But once things start going downhill in the show, in the movie, that where they're finally engaged. It's like, all right, get all these documents. What's going on here? Are you kidding me? That and you had like that family dynamic where like obviously everything that it's like Russian trust fund kid, uh, and his parents come down to the U.S. and stuff, and that whole thing ensues, and it's just funny seeing like that Slavic, Russian culture, or like the parallels with like Slavic culture and Latin culture, Latino, very intriguing, right? Especially as someone like I'm American, obviously, but you know, growing up with like the Brazilian culture, going back and forth to Rio, it was kind of funny seeing like how the parallels, that cultural parallels are just like this is very very intriguing, and I find this very very like um it's close to home culturally, But obviously, like they're hunting the kid down. He's on a bender, right? After when they're trying to get the documents and like get the kid to go to get the marriage annulled or the divorce. I forget. Um, and then the ending of that movie is kind of stupid, where one of the Gangoons uh, was dropping her off back to her home or whatever. It's like I don't know. It felt insulting to like, oh, you know, yeah, she had all this ripped away from her. There's a genuine guy trying to help out in this shitty situation, and then it just kind of I don't know, it fully unravels, and then it's just like, oh, this ending was dumb, and I'm not satisfied, and maybe that's it. Like out of what could have been salvaged in this story, I think that's why I was like, that's a stupid ending. Um, Aside from that, I think I don't know. The first third, if you cut out the first third ish and just kind of got like a synopsis of that, or like cut that off. I don't. The funny part is like I feel like you could cut most of that off and just started literally with, you know, um, her bumping into the Russian oligarch's kid at the club, this club she works at, and go from there. But at the same time, everything after Vegas was like in that show movie. I keep saying show. I'm tethered to that for whatever reason, but everything after Vegas, like I would say that's a solid 8. But the first third of the movie kind of makes me want to dock 2.2 or 3 points because of how sexually graphic it is. So um, I don't know. I'd say it's like a solid 7. But if you're more concerned about seeing all that, and obviously movies that I prefer don't are more like graphic when it comes to violence rather than sexual. So, um, with that, I would probably say it's a 6, 7.5. Um, no, I did think it was a funny movie. It was a decent flick. Um, and then moving forward, Wall Street. I really like Wall Street, but obviously it was just kind of I don't know. I feel like Trading Places was is a better movie. Like it just I think conceptually a better movie. It's two people swap spots. The spoiled rich kid and homeless man, and they kind of do this experiment, and then obviously both of the movies have the whole insider trading thing go on, and I think for a drama or whatever you want to call Wall Street, I think it's a better story or narrative, but Trading Places was a lot more entertaining. So there's that dynamic. So I'd give Wall Street a solid 8, 9. Uh I enjoyed it. I think you see like the this kind of like what titan of industry that Gordon Gekko was. You have a lot of good quotes in there. Um it's a well written story, a movie. Um and I think at the end, you see Sheen, Bud Fox, going back into his office. Like thinking he beat Gordon Gekko, and then obviously the FBI and SEC. I think it was SEC and FBI were in there, and he's just getting a score. Basically, like goes to his office, like everyone's quiet, staring at him like someone died in the room, and then it goes all the way around, and you know, um, I like that. I like Wall Street a lot more, like general narrative. he's his broker, whatever. Finally lands his biggest, a whale client, and then this whole thing, the whole story ensues, right? Like, okay, now I'm literally basically your personal assistant or personal broker, doing everything for you, kind of going ad libbing and power of attorney. Um, and I think I feel like narratively speaking, insider trading works like a good storytelling piece in the finance sector, at least for films in the discussing or talking about whatever, where you have a bunch of bad actors out there and having them compromise their own morals to capture whatever they're chasing in the story. It looks like an easy writing tool, and I mean, it pushes the story forward, and that's about it, at least in the finance flicks. And I mean, from that, like, what do you do really? I mean, you see it in several finance movies, or trading movies, and so I don't know. Maybe I'll watch Wall Street too. It's just like, speaking of that is kind of tricky, especially with being kind of tangential or within that industry as well. More as an independent, but it's a whole different story if you're working within an organization versus independent, where you're kind of in exile. So, ramble done. Going into Pragmata, I really enjoyed Pragmata. It was one of the games that I was waiting for a while, and to rate it briefly, I'd give it a solid 8. I think eight's a decent spot. Um, I did have to like take decent breaks between. Maybe it's because I've just gotten more and more aggressive with work and working on projects relating to my company to keep me away from playing. I don't know how to describe that, but um, a synopsis of like the start point or whatever is that the main character gets stranded on a space station. He's a engineer. I was gonna say mechanic, but he's an engineer, trying to fix a whatever system or something, and there's an earthquake, knocks him out unconscious. He ends up in like cargo storage or whatever. There's a robot designed to look like another character's daughter, and effectively, you know, she becomes like Hugh, the engineers or the protagonist's pseudo adoptive daughter, but it's a robot, so I don't. Whatever, the people online are weird, but um, with that, it's basically a robot that hacks other robots, and I mean, that being said, it works out fine. I mean, it's just like the shooter aspect was nice. I do always enjoy something being like a new mechanic, something different, um, being tested. Right? I don't think there's a shooter out there that's also like a freaking puzzle game, but late game or story wise, whatever. Right? When once you get to the end of the story or end of the game, whatever, it starts to get pretty annoying where it's like, oh, I gotta, spam whatever button to, push through the purple or blue highlighted thing so that I can get this or that or move from point one to point two. Um, and while I enjoy the early game, of like up to mid game, I think it started to hit like right around the lunar mines. I think lunar wherever they dig, there's this big worm looking thing, robot worm looking thing, and that was kind of where the game started. Like, oh yeah, this is getting a little annoying mechanically. even if I enjoy the game, um, I don't think it does much like different from a narrative perspective. But it's like, I see the DNA of Lost Planet. I see the DNA of Resident Evil. I see the DNA of like a bunch of Capcom stuff I played historically. But yeah, I'm happy that it sold well. I like supporting new IP that I find intriguing because obviously I want new stuff. I'm tired of the I don't know. Let's say Star Wars. I don't think Disney did a great job with the IP, and it's just like continuing new story, like extending out something that could have been ended, or a trickle out like over time, drip feed. Like, oh, um, we don't need to release Star Wars every year. We can release it every 4 or 5 years. We could spread out this and then make it like this bigger IP just by trickle, putting some TLC in it. And I think that's appropriate when something like Pragmata and you have early stage, early life um, developers or directors working on it. And, you have young people industry wise working on the project, and they're at the helm, and they're trying something different while it still feels familiar. Whereas Star Wars seems to like Disney's got its formula; it won't break from it. Part in my opinion. I mean, just look at most of the Marvel stuff. It's just like it's literally the same movie every movie. Is literally the same movie once you realize the plot structure, and that took me completely out of watching that stuff. But obviously, at the same time, my taste wasn't developed, and I was like a teenager when I used to watch all that stuff. Now it's like, well, the only thing superhero wise is like, oh, DC. I still prefer Batman, and that's kind of it. Oh, Spawn was awesome, but Pragmata is decent. I think when you get down to like the sentiments, and then there's obviously like mechanical criticisms, but obviously I'm not a designer, but I think there's a fair criticism or opinion when you've had so much experience to develop your palette, your taste of literature, film, games, um, music as well. You could obviously say culinary taste as well, but I think that part of thing, right, that specific piece, the culinary piece is super pretentious. But aside from that, that's kind of it for book club. Um, Obviously, I don't know when I'll have the next one. I think book club will be very infrequent. However, I think they'll be longer. They'll be a lot longer than my typical videos. Um, and I just want to give a more palatable like description, synopsis, opinion than my other videos where it could just be more, kind of laissez-faire, more just kind of ad-libbing, more structure, just depending on like what vibe I'm going for that week, that episode of the week, or like if I came up with something to work on as a project per se that week, and it's like, okay, now here's what I kind of here's my thoughts for the week, and here's an idea, video idea, right? And that's kind of all. Like I want to ramble, but this is more of a tangential satellite that's still relevant because just exploring taste, giving opinion, giving reasonable criticism and thought, and having fun with it or enjoy trying to discuss it. So that's about it. I mean, thank you for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, comment below, ring the bell. Bye bye.